Welcome to the Plastics and Beyond podcast, an SPE-sponsored podcast supporting a diverse, equitable, and inclusive workforce. I am your host, Lilian Judy, and I invite you to join me every month for new, diverse conversations. Welcome to another episode of the Plastics and Beyond podcast, and I'm really excited today for our next guest because she's someone that does a lot in the plastic space. And I feel like she's personally mentored me as I've tried to figure out my way out in the plastics industry. So today we have Lynzie Nebel, and welcome, Lynzie.
Hi.
How are you doing today?
I am just lovely. There's a snowstorm coming in and I am all bundled up.
I know. I woke up and there's snow on my car and I'm trying to figure that out.
Very disrespectful.
So, Lynzie, can you tell our listeners and viewers who you are? Maybe they've heard about you, maybe they've seen your picture all over, but can you tell people who is Lynzie and what do you do?
So I am Lynzie Nebel. I have been in the industry for about 15 years. I am currently work at Cytiva, an Upstream Quote Engineer. I'm pretty sure I messed up the order of those words. And I am also on the executive board for SPE, which also means I sit on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion board. And I am co-host of the other SPE podcast, PlastChicks.
So how did you end up in plastics? For me, my story is always I stumbled into plastics engineering. I didn't know it existed. How did you figure out that you wanted to do plastics, and how did you even find the the program?
Same. I 100% stumbled into it. My high school had a tabletop injection molding machine, which wild, and very dangerous the way we did it, but that's fine. It was the 2000s. Nobody cared. And so I was talking to my guidance counselor and he made it sound like I had to take this class. I took this class. It was all about manufacturing processes. And we used the tabletop injection molding machine. We had a little bitty rotational molder, cutest little thing. And maybe a couple other secondary plastics things. And I thought that was a cool class. Nothing you can do with that. Put that folder away. And I took some random quiz that was what should you be? Because I was going to be a music major, but I had injured my wrist in, the old-fashioned cheerleading accident. And so I couldn't play as much. So I was trying to think, what are my other options? And I stumbled into plastic, and I'm from just south of Buffalo, New York, and I saw that there's a school in Erie. I did also set up a visit for UMass Lowell, but I was accepted to Penn State before, and I was an hour and a half away from home.
It's closer.
Good. Yeah. A good stop.
Yeah. So when you were in college, what would you say I don't want to say percentage, but what did the classrooms look like?
So,
and you can explain it, gender, race, everything, anything.
So as I'm sure we've all guessed, my class was very white, 100%. And there were 36 of us and there were 4 women. So, and we actually had one of the largest counts of women in our class at the time, which,
compared to other engineering?
Compared to other engineering and compared to other plastics classes. Most classes were carrying 1 to 2 women. Occasionally you get a class where it's 6 women, 8 women. It's holy cow. But we have 4. So we were really boosting the numbers. And Penn State Barron, especially at the time, was much, I think the ratio of men to women was 60% men. Actually, it might have been 65-70% men. It was like 30% women. Like that's what they called the Barron's ratio. They have added a lot more courses that have drawn a lot more women. And I would like to think that there are a lot more women choosing, male dominated fields now, but might not be as much of the case as I would like it to be.
Yeah, no, and I think that's relative to my experience as well. We were, we had a bit of diversity. There were a number of Indians in plastics, most of them international students who came from out of the country. But my group, I think we started off as 4 women, 1 dropped out. I was the only Black. The other girl was African American. I was Black from Africa. The other girl was African American. And it was just, we basically stuck together. So,
Right.
Right. And so in that time, you were pretty young then, I would assume. During that time, did anything stand out to you regarding how the lack of diversity in your classes or in this degree?
Yeah, I was a pretty shy person coming into college.
I find that hard to believe.
I definitely found a lot of my footing by being in engineering. So it was very intimidating. And honestly, there was actually another woman who was in the my plastics class with me, and she dropped very early on. And like, I thought her and I were going to be like besties. And when she dropped, I felt very alone, very isolated, because the other 2 women I didn't really know. And then there was another woman that I was like, all right, I think I can bond with her. But like, she knew a lot of the guys from our class because she had gone to school with them, high school with them. So like, she was already kind of in. So I felt very intimidated. I wasn't sure. I was like, was this the right call? I'm paying out of state tuition. I'm here by myself. Like, and honestly, if it weren't for the fact that my parents were like, listen, we're not going to get another loan for you to go to a different school. I was like, I just got to stick it out. Like, yeah, I don't have another choice. Like, if I don't do this, I don't go to school. So figure it out. Like, you will figure it out. You will find other people. It'll be okay.
Yeah. And I think it's really sad to see that it was so bad that you wanted to be out of the program. You know what I mean? For me, it was so bad that I didn't know if I wanted to stay in the program as well, because I couldn't find anyone that looked like me and I couldn't relate as a whole, And I think it's, even now, so many years later, I feel like young women are still struggling. Yes, there has been a bit of change and growth and improvement, but I think there's still that. When you look back now, what do you think would have helped you deal with that?
I think some of it could have been, maybe a little bit more formal mentoring from upperclassmen, women reaching out. I think that could have helped a little bit. I was still a little shy, so I don't know how much I would have like benefited, other than just, being like, and I think some of it is stuff you learn along the way. I remember really thinking a lot of the guys in my class, like, what do they know this already? Like, what did they learn in high school that I didn't? Like, I was in the top percentage of my class in high school always. What did I miss? Yeah. These guys are coming in and understanding it. And now I understand that a lot of it was just their attitude, their mentality, that like, I mostly got the concept I'm fine with moving on. Whereas like, to me as a perfectionist, I really wanted to know the full concept. I wanted to learn a concept and then be able to teach it immediately. And when I couldn't do that, because, plastics is a whole new ball game from what you're taught, like I remember one time we were learning about slides in injection molds, and I just could not wrap my head around it. Like, could not. And finally, I got the nerve up to ask one of my professors. I said, "Hey, can I go in the lab and see a slide? Like, I'm not getting it." And he's like, "Okay." And he announced it to the class. He said, "I'm going down in the lab. I'm going to show you what a slide looks like." And I remember, I think like 14 people came down, and I was like, "You guys don't get it either." Like, it felt like it was just me, and it wasn't. It was so many more people. And I think if I had known going in, like, you are on the same page as everyone else. Nobody else has the advantage. I mean, there's the occasional kid that's like worked in a plastics factory since, they're born. But, overall, you're pretty much on the same page. Like, and I didn't have the foresight to see that. I thought I was the only one behind, and that added to the isolation.
Yeah. And I think it's a confidence issue as well, because I also lacked a lot of confidence. And I remember vividly, we had this exam. I really don't remember what class it was, probably fluid flow. And it was it was one of those classes where, like, if you had the previous year's exams, like, it was pretty similar. So it's good to study with, the papers from the year before. And we were all in the library studying, and I saw that the guys had gathered around, like, working through a paper. And I realized that they got that information from their dorms, right? And the girls, because there aren't a lot of girls, where are we getting that from? So my friend and I had to literally push ourselves into the guys' conversations and say, "Oh, what are you guys looking at? Can we join?" And they were receptive, but we had to be confident enough to step up to them and, do that. And literally the exam was literally like a replica of it. Yeah. So I was like, this is what we are missing out on. Yeah. We're not confident enough in ourselves, but then there's also so many resources out there that we may not even be aware of, and that's even just on a college level, right?
Right.
When you,
I mean, that's, I know we were just talking, I spent the week past 2 days at Women Breaking the Mold. And a lot of what we were talking was how this access to the next level, or this access to information, or, to the higher ups, or to the people making the decisions, it's not always, it's typically passed down to people that are friends or friendly or like-minded or like each other, or, you went to this college, you were in this fraternity, here, let's pass that down because you're my brother. And it's like, it cuts off such a big portion of people, and it gives us no in routes for access unless we force our way in.
Exactly. And I think in that case, so when I was coming up in college, I thought I needed to have a female mentor, right? And it wasn't until after I graduated that's when I realized that in reality, with the industry that I find myself in, I most likely would benefit from having a white male mentor, right? And it's sad that these are the specifics of it, but that's really what it is. And I say that you have truly mentored me because when I came for Antec this year, 2022, you literally, like, I'm shy as well. You wouldn't believe it. But I had to come to you and, because I feel confident and safe enough to be able to talk to you. And so I came to you on multiple occasions, like, "Oh, I want to meet people. Like, I don't know anyone." And you held my hand and introduced me to some of the most amazing people, amazing men that I have met with so much knowledge who are willing to help, willing to support. And imagine someone who doesn't have access to you, who has the access now, right? Well, in my opinion. What does that person do? So cutting off the access is very real and very true. But I want to pivot to, okay, now you graduated from college, you're working. How was your interviewing process like when you were working, regarding like confidence, being confident in yourself and interviewing in rooms with all these guys, and just maybe if you're like me, you probably felt small in some of the rooms. How was that entire experience for you?
So, I feel like I had a probably less than typical interviewing experience because I graduated at the height of the recession. We're like,
Oh, okay.
right as it was ramping up. So my class was really just trying to survive, and it was if somebody offered you a position,
you take
it. And I had previously taken an internship at a company in Butler called Pittsburgh PlastChicks, and it was a fun company to work for. It just wasn't injection molding, which is what I wanted to do. And I will say, gave me a lot of experience with like 2-part thermostats, and so it was a good, interesting adventure. But it wasn't. I wanted to come out and I wanted to be on a custom injection molding floor, and watching molds get built and run and all that stuff. So I will say the interview process for me was fairly simple, but it's because I only interviewed for 2 places because there were so few offers on the table, like just all around. I think everyone in my class got a job, but it was one of those situations where it was like, whew, we're in. And then had I taken the other offer I had, I would have been laid off within 3 months. So that position went right away. So it was not ideal, but I stayed there for a year and a half, like that. And then there was an offer for a job that was injection molding back in Erie, kind of like what I wanted. And I have been very fortunate that I have had people that have been allies for me. And I know this is something to talk about, allies different than a mentor and all that stuff. An ally, someone who will, or I guess champion, probably mixing up the words. But someone who will say your name when you're not around.
Yeah.
And I was very fortunate that in this job, a friend of mine had said, I know someone that I think would be really great for this position. And he mentioned my name, and thankfully I was able to interview a small injection molding company. It was a little intimidating, especially because, your friend's putting your name up. You don't want to let him down. But thankfully, I think it was a fairly straightforward interview. So I didn't, the more interviews you do, I'm your classic millennial job hopper. The more you can kind of build up that experience, that confidence, and kind of be like, well, you're talking to me, so I must have something to offer you.
Exactly. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I love that you threw the word ally out there, because that's where I wanted to go next. In the professional field now, you've been working for a number of years. How do you identify these allies? Like, how do you position yourself to be connected to someone who can mention your name in rooms you can never find yourself in?
So I think, I know a lot of women don't like to brag about themselves. I am also in that category, but I think I am a hell of a matchmaker. Like, I feel like one of my strengths is being able to, meet people and see where, and not that they can benefit me. That sounds a little selfish, but I do a lot for SPE. I do a lot for the foundation. I try and keep these people in mind for when an opportunity could come up that they would be great for. There's been several times where I've helped Eve Vitale, the chair of the foundation, brainstorm names for people that could, sit on different committees or have connections. And I think the way that my mind kind of works is when I meet someone, I like meeting people. I'm one of those introvert extroverts. So like I always have a certain level of energy and then I melt. But I do like meeting people and seeing what their strengths are and, seeing what they have to offer or where we can work together again. Some people are just really fun. I just met a woman at the conference yesterday. Her name was Kiana Key, and she works for Continental Tire. She's in rubber, but she was one of the best speakers I have ever seen in my entire life.
Wow.
And so like in my mind, like I have her name on like a short list of like, what can I do to reconnect with her or, put her name forward for something else. Like, and not to say she's going to take these things because maybe, like she's got a full plate, but she was just so inspiring. I want to be able to, meet up with her again or be in the same room as her again. And I think I'm always kind of keeping lists of where can these people go. And so, I guess other end of that, if you're the person looking to be mentioned or to be, put up for something, it's really about meeting people and like highlighting what your interests are, not even your strengths necessarily. I mean, if you got great strengths, then throw them out there. Or, like, hey, by the way, I'm really good at like video editing. Someone might be like, oh, that might actually be something I could use, know. But if there's passions, find the people that are doing that and just mention it to them. It doesn't mean, they'll have room for you on a committee right away or whatever, but we're always looking for people. We're always keeping people in mind. Always want new, fresh ideas. Like, and so it's as much as like the introduction part to me is always overwhelming. Like I feel like I'm terrible at networking events, but it's it's about just making yourself at least seen, or you can reach out on LinkedIn. Like it doesn't have to be in person. It can be virtual. That does take a lot of the edge off. And it doesn't, like, that's another thing. Like when I do see these people, I try and connect with them and just try and shoot them a message, and if I'm really interested in like keeping them on, like, or a foundation or whatever, I shoot them a message, just say, hey, how have you been? Like, or I saw this article that you were in. It was awesome. Good job. Just little shout outs to let them know you're thinking of them. It keeps your name on their mind and vice versa.
Yeah. Okay. So I think you've kind of answered my next question already. I was gonna say, what are some tips or suggestions that you can give to young women graduating from college or already in the industry but trying to do more and trying to connect with the right people? I would say being connected with SPE has really helped me a lot with that. And I don't know how early you were connected to SPE, but because you do a lot you're on like a lot of communities. Like I didn't want to try to introduce you because I didn't want to leave one out. But you do a lot, and it's really inspiring, honestly, because you're also a mom you're also a wife. And I feel like being able to do all these things, having all these extra titles, it's like, it's really impressive. One last thing, or before I move forward, do you actually have something to add to that?
I mean, I think, being an SPE is, a big part of what does, drive what I do. So, I think some people look at SPE and like, I don't know what that does for me. And for me, it has done everything. And a lot of it is that networking, that like knowing people and people knowing about me. And so even if you're young professional trying to get into the industry and you don't see the value yet, first of all, your first 2 years are free. So just do it. And I have been a member since I was a student, but that was because we got bonus points on tests.
Oh gosh.
Sucker for a bonus point.
Yeah, no. So networking, I guess that's the big overarching theme. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So as a mom, right, and as a working professional in the industry, do you have concerns about there not being enough opportunities for moms to how do I word this? For mothers in general? And what do you think can be done with that?
Yeah, I think it's really hard because there is that perception sometimes that like if you're a mom, you're going to be distracted. If you're distracted, you're not going to be a good employee. If you're not a good employee, you're not going to stay. And it's that whole chain. But for me, and I think probably a lot of moms, what drives me is like, so, I have 3 little boys, expecting a 4th mystery baby. And I want my boys to see me as someone who really commits to what I say I'm going to commit to. I want them to see me as someone who is trying to work outside themselves. I mean, I may be a very selfish person, but I do try to do these things. And there's a lot of studies where moms with young boys, if the moms work outside the homes, the boys become better husbands, better fathers. And, I want that for my boys. I want them to be kind. And, they are going to be white men someday. I want them to be kind, respectful, always looking to help the next person out. I don't want them to, go down the negative tropes of what they could be, And so I feel like it's my job to make sure that they see me trying to do everything I can and see my struggles and see where I'm, left out of the conversation, or where I'm, I have to force my way in, or where I, am just not considered. There have been times where, because I do a lot, people have said, if I'm looking for like another opportunity, or I'm trying to do something else, people have said to me, like, well, you probably won't be interested because, you've got so much going on. And it's like, yes, I do have a lot going on, but let me manage my schedule.
Yeah.
Like, I will be responsible for my schedule, not you. If I can't do it, I should be a
we'll let you know.
Person to let you know. And like, even, I've had, this coming up with my 4th kid, I've had 4 different jobs during my kids. So I've had 4 different types of maternity leave. Some have been paid, some have not been paid. This company I'm at now, Cytiva, I will say, has been by far the best company I've worked for. They're very progressive in their approach. I remember even when I interviewed, we were walking in the engineering department. Not when I interviewed, when I came out for like one of my first visits, we were walking through the engineering department, and they're like, "Oh, I think so-and-so's out on maternity leave." And they're like, "Oh, I think so." Like, it was just so nice to hear that there were multiple women and multiple women that either just had a baby or like, I wouldn't be, the exception. And I've always been the exception. And, even sitting on the executive board, I've had maternity leaves, and I've said, okay, guys, like, I have done a lot. I am now taking my maternity leave. Only if it's an emergency, but otherwise I'm going to be like healing and growing here. And not that they haven't been supportive of it, but I think it was like, oh, yeah, I guess you do have to do, like, I was the first person to take a maternity leave on the executive board. So, I think some people probably do look upon that negatively. I think I don't know how much swearing you want on this podcast, but I think I bust my ass enough to, prove my worth and do a lot and set things up so that when I'm gone on maternity leave, there are still things moving. There are still projects going. I don't think I'm leaving and just going into a black hole. I might not physically be there because above everything else, I will prioritize my family. Like, I love the plastics industry, but I will burn it all down for my family.
Yeah, no. Thank you for the transparency, because for me, I'm not yet a mom, and I aspire to be one day. And that's been a thought, like, in my head for the past couple of years. It's like, how am I going to, handle this? Like, I hope I don't find myself in a situation where I don't want to have to choose. Like, I don't want it to have to be a decision. I want it to be okay. Like, it should be part of the rules and regulations or whatever, that, okay, she's on maternity leave. We'll pick up when she comes back. She can pick up where she left off, and not have to make a decision like, oh, you should do A, B, C, D, E. And so it's inspiring to hear you say you've had 4 different experiences, and thankfully now this, where you are now, has, or is showing signs of more forward thinking. I hope this serves as some kind of motivation for anyone else, any other woman who was or has been worrying, like myself, being an engineer in the industry as well, when it comes to maternity leave. But Lynzie, I can talk to you for days. I have like so many more questions I want to ask you, but we're running out of time. And before we leave, I want us to end off with this question. What does diversity mean to you? We talked about different aspects of it, in my opinion. You've touched on so many important points, important topics, being a woman in the industry, being a minority, all these different things. What would you say diversity means to you?
I think, to me, diversity means just, I think a bit more on the equity and like inclusion end of things. I think it just means not feeling like you're alone, or feeling like you have to change something about yourself in order to do something you want to do. I think it means, you've come to a place where you actually can say, oh, they respected my opinion because I'm smart as hell. Like,
Yeah.
And I think, and not have, because, there are times where that is the case. It's just because you're smart as hell. And sometimes there are other factors, and those little voices saying like, well, it's just because you're a woman, or it's just because I didn't want to make you mad, or it's just because, and I think by, embracing diversity and equity and inclusion and all of that, I think you start to like kill off those little voices, and we can all just, to me, diversity seems like a more relaxing place to be, and I'm all about being relaxed and, just taking away some of that tension and that anxiety and, just that those frustrations, I think. Yeah.
No, that's I've never heard it from that angle before. But it's relatable, if I can say that. For me, I always struggle to put diversity into words, honestly, because
it's hard.
So maybe this was kind of like a trick question. Who knows?
I love a good trick question.
But it's hard to, there's so many facets to it. And so
right.
I find that people define it based on where they are in their life at that point, right? And maybe some experiences that they have just experienced like recently. And so I appreciate you sharing that with us. I appreciate you coming on the podcast. Yeah. I look forward to coming on the PlastChicks.
Yes, once we get our act together.
No, this has been really, really refreshing. And thank you so much once again. Congratulations on your 4th child. And we look forward to having you back next season. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Well, I hope you learned a thing or two from this episode, and I will definitely see you all on the next episode of the Plastics and Beyond podcast.